Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to TextLearn's Intro to Java series. This is lesson 2.1 where we will begin discussing variables. So what is a variable? Well, variables are elements of programs that store data such as numbers or text in the computer's memory. They can be thought of as containers which hold values. So in the example below we have these two numbers, 27 and 8. We throw them into containers, and then the program performs computations on those numbers. In this case, for the example, I'm multiplying I times x, so we're multiplying the variable I by the variable x. So it's 27 times 8, which then becomes the program's output of 216. Variables are declared by typing the keyword for the variable type, followed by the variable's identifier name. So if we look over at that little example here in the blue box, you can see int x equals 5. So that just means we're creating this variable called x, and we're assigning its value to 5. And of course that line of code ends with a semicolon like the print line statements did in the previous chapter. So when you're naming the identifier, in this case the identifier is just simply x, you must start the identifier with an underscore, a letter, or a money sign. So the beginning can look like that. The following characters in the identifier name may be letters, underscores, money signs, or numbers. You should not use Java keywords in your variable names. So for example, the word int here, that stands for integer, we'll get to that in a second, is a keyword in Java. That's why it shows up in blue. And we don't want to use those in variable names because they are reserved for other purposes. And identifiers for variables typically do not start with a capital letter. Each additional word in the identifier typically does, and this is known as lower Camelcase. If you remember the last section, the last chapter, we talked about Camelcase and how we named the class with Camelcase. Well, this is the same thing pretty much, except instead the very first character is lowercase instead of uppercase. And it's not required to do this, but it is good practice. And if you don't do this, people are going to look at your code and wonder what you're doing or who taught you how to program. And don't tell them it was me, because I told you about lower Camelcase. Integers. Integers are variable types which can hold whole number values such as 1, 2, 3, 4, so on. They cannot store numbers with decimal places, so there is no 1.5 or anything like that, and they may be negative or positive, so it can be -1, -2, -3, 0, 1, 2, 3, things like that. And they are declared using the Java keyword int, so just like the last example, integer x equals 5, semicolon. So that is creating a variable with the identifier x and the data type integer and assigning its value to 5. So let's go ahead and start looking at some examples. So let me get Eclipse up and running here. Alright, so I have my Hello World program open from the last time, and I'm just gonna delete the Hello World part. Might as well show you the example in the same program. There's really no need to create a new program just for my demo purposes. Alright, so we're just going to type that code in that I had previously had. So integer x equals 5, so that is creating a variable. And these are comments. I didn't mention this in the last video, I kind of forgot, but I did throw a little footnote in there. So to create comments, you just use 2 backslashes and you start writing whatever you want. And then the comments get ignored by the compiler, so it doesn't actually become part of your code. It's just for reference. And putting comments in is incredibly important in coding, because if you go back to look at your code later, you're going to want to know what you did. And if other people look at your code, they're going to want to know what you did. So integer x equals 5. So now we have x, and we have assigned its value to 5. So we can print that out using systemout.println, just like we did for Hello World. Out.println, and then we'll just print out x. So we create a variable and we print it out to the screen using the output stream. Run that. And as you can see in the console, it now shows 5 as being the output, so that clearly worked well. You can also create variables and declare them without assigning a value to them immediately. So we could just say int x, so that's saying that we're going to have this integer x, and then we can assign value to it later. So x equals 5, or let's just make x equals 50, change it, and we run that, and now it is 50. So that's the basics of assigning values to variables. Now let's start working on some basic arithmetic operations. So you're probably familiar with addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. That's pretty common, standard stuff that everyone goes through in elementary school. So addition, we'll do that one first. So we have integer x equals 5, and then we can say x equals 5, or x equals x plus 5. So what is this going to do? Well, we're creating an integer named x, assigning its value to 5, and then we're taking x and we're setting it equal to x plus 5. So this is basic algebra here. Now you don't need to know a lot about algebra to get to start programming, but it's definitely going to be helpful if you do. So we're taking x, which is currently equal to 5, we're adding 5 to it, so now we have 10, 5 plus 5 is 10, and then that is going back into x. So x should be equal to 10 when we run this program. As you can see, it is equal to 10, so that worked successfully. So we take whatever is on the right side of the equal sign, and that gets passed into whatever is on the left side. Subtraction works exactly the same way. We'll change that plus to a minus, change that 5 into a 3, and now we have int x equals 5, so 5 minus 3, that should be 2. So x should be equal to 2 once we print it out. And if you want to, you can also go in here, print line x. So now we can see what happens step by step. And when you're programming, there will be many instances, even if you're creating a windowed application or something like that, you're still going to want to use the console a lot, because just for testing purposes, you can put little pieces of code in here just to print out information, see what's going on in your program, and then once you actually finish creating your program, you can get rid of that console if you want to. But let's run that, and now you can see x is equal to 5 at the first point, then we subtract 3, and now x is equal to 2. Multiplication. So for multiplication, we use the asterisk, and that just means multiply. So x equals x times 3, so that should multiply 5 by 3 and give us 15. So let's see if that worked. It did. X is equal to 5. 5 times 3 is 15. Print out the x. Now x is equal to 15. And finally, we have division. Now, division's a little different, especially with when you're using integers, because there's no remainder in there. Because if we take 5 and divide by 3, of course, that would come out to be some type of decimal value. But when we run this, we just get 1. And that's because when we take 5 and we divide it by 3, the result is 1 with the remainder of 2/3, I believe. So to find that remainder, and for the division sign we use the backslash operator. I'm not sure if I told that. So let's just do x divided by 2, and now we get 2. There's an easier one. So that's 2.5 is what that would be if it was with decimals, but we only have the 2 part of that. So to get the remainder, we use the modulus operator. And modulus means just the same thing, it's just divide, but instead of finding the value, we find the remainder. So x is equal, or let's just say int remainder is equal to x mod 2. And let's get rid of that. And this will print out. What do you think it'll print out? It's not going to print out anything because I don't have anything to print out the remainder there. So system out print line remainder. And now it's 1. So that just means that the remainder when you divide 5 by 2 is 1. So that's how you figure that out with the modulus operator. Alright, so that's basic arithmetic right there. Now we can throw in different variables and kind of manipulate them in different ways. So we could have integer x equals 10, integer y equals 20, and integer result equals x plus y. So what's this going to do? We set x to 10, y to 20, add those two together, throw the result into the result, and then we can do system out print line result. We'll run that, and we get 30 because, of course, 10 plus 20 is 30. So that is arithmetic. Now there are a few shorthand methods to doing arithmetic in Java that will speed up your time, and you will see these used all over the place, so that's why I want to cover it so early on, because I will be using these throughout the series. So let's do an addition with shorthand. Alright, so x equals 10, and now let's say we want to add 5 to that integer x equals 10. And now let's say we want to add 5 to that variable. Well, what we did before was we did x equals x plus 5. Now this part here gets a little redundant. We don't want to have to type in x equals x plus 5 every single time because programmers are lazy. So to simplify this, what we do instead is we do x plus equals 5. And what this plus equals means is that we are just adding 5 to x and putting the value back in x. So this is equivalent to x equals x plus 5. It's just a little quicker to write. So when we type that system out print line x, the result, of course, is 15. Same thing applies for subtraction. So x minus equals 5 is the same as x equals x minus 5. Run that, and we get 5 because 10 minus 5 is 5. Multiplication, same deal. X times equals 5. Now we get 50 because 10 times 5 is 50, and now x is equal to 50, so x equals x times 5. Division, same exact thing again, backslash equals 5, 2, because 10 divided by 5 is 2. And the last thing I want to say for shorthand is incrementing and decrementing, and you can increment by 1 simply by doing x plus plus. You don't even have to type a value after that. When you have two plus operators next to each other, it just means take that value, take that variable, and increment it by 1. So x equals x plus 1. So this should print out 11 because 10 plus 1 equals 11. Same applies for minus. So you can do x minus minus, and you get 9. So that is how you use shorthand arithmetic operators. And the final thing I want to talk about in this video is order of operations. Okay, so when we are using Java, it will be doing it in a certain order. So say we have x equals 5 plus 2 divided by 1, or let's do x equals 5 plus 5 divided by 2. What will the answer to that be? And of course it has to be integer. I keep forgetting to do that. So integer x equals 5 plus 5 divided by 2. Will that be 10 divided by 2, which would be 5? Or will that be 5 divided by 2, which in this case would be 2, plus 5, which would be 7? So is that going to come out to be 5 or 7? Well, let's see what happens here. The answer is 7, because Java will see the division and multiplication operators. It does those first before it does the addition. And that's pretty much the same exact way you're taught in grade school to do arithmetic. So that shouldn't be anything new for you, but it is important to note that Java doesn't process from left to right when it reads this, it looks for the division first before it does the addition or subtraction. So if we had, for example, 5 plus 10 times 2 minus 6, what's that going to be equal to? Well, first, Java's going to multiply 10 and 2. That's going to be 20. And then it's going to be 5 plus 20 minus 6. So that's going to come out to be 19. Now to get around this, say for example you actually wanted to add 5 and 10 before you multiplied by 2, what you would do is you would use parentheses to indicate the order that you want to do it in. And that means that Java will know to add 10 and 5 together to get 15, and then it'll multiply that by 2, and then it'll subtract by 6 to get our answer of 24. So whenever you want to change the order of operations, you can simply add parentheses in as you need them. And you can do this at multiple levels if you'd like to. So for example, we can put the whole entire thing in parentheses if we want to. And we could say, for example, take 6 divided by 2, put that over there, or 6 divided by 2 plus 12. 2 plus 1. We run that, we get 23. So what's going on here is we're multiplying the 10 and the 2 first. We get 20 there, so it is 5 plus 20 minus 3, minus 2, my bad. 5 plus 20 minus 2, which comes out to our result of 23. So that makes sense there. So that's how order of operations works, and that's how you can use the parentheses to kind of change what things happen in which order. And that concludes lesson 2.1 of the Intro to Java series. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got something out of it. Stay tuned for the next video where we will begin working with strings of text. So that'll be fun. Take care.